What up? Welcome to Homegrown Hustle, where local brilliance takes the center stage. I'm your host, Matt Eichmann. Together, we're about to embark on an inspiring journey. Our community thrives on the wisdom of insightful leaders that are right here in our backyard. And we're bringing their expertise to your ears. Whether you're an aspiring entrepreneur or simply seeking inspiration, this podcast is your guide. Join us every week in celebrating innovation, guidance, and the power to inspire greatness. Let's explore the stories that shape our local business landscape, and together, let's ignite the spark of excellence. What's up? Matt Eichmann here with the Homegrown Hustle podcast. I'm here with Laura Johnson of Laura Margot Murals and Designs and other art.
Custom art.
Yep. She does some amazing work, has an awesome story, and we're just riffing for quite a while about just like theory of art. But Laura, for those who are listening that don't know you, do you want to go ahead and introduce yourself a little bit?
Yeah, sure. Yeah, so I am primarily a mural painter, but I've painted since I was a child. And I work with residential and commercial clients around the Twin Cities and also surrounding metro area. I've done some travel for various projects, but something that sort of defines my business and kind of has continued to move me forward is that all my artistic projects are collaborations with my clients. So I'll get brought in by someone who just is looking to do something cool with their space, either interior or exterior, and help them kind of dream up different ideas for really kind of making that sort of wow and
so
is
special. It people have an image in mind, or they just are like they have a wall that they want something on? Is it kind of one or the other, or you get both sides of the spectrum?
Both sides, definitely. So, I mean, a lot of times it's like a blank wall, something that they're like, we have this and it's boring and it's sad and we don't know what to hang there, or, or it's like, it's too big to just like hang a couple canvases on or something. And, they will be like, is this something you could do? So I'd say I have that piece where it's like a blank wall that people are just like, we need something here. Or there's like we'd love this to advertise for our business or something like that. Or, it's clients that have sort of a clear idea, whether it's like a logo or an image or something that like maybe their design team has created, and then they want it painted within their space. So
can you go in and like replicate logos in a mural form almost?
Yes, totally.
With technology?
Yeah.
The science exists. This is awesome. Exists. We're just getting started too. So, so before we get into too much of the business stuff, which I am excited about, like, can we back it up? So you said you've been painting since you were a child.
Right.
And I feel like a lot of us can say that, right? But at some point there's like this fall off where like, other than a wall in my house, I don't think I've painted for like a long time.
So true for so many people. Yeah.
Like, was there like a time early on where you were like, I love this, I could paint forever, like in your early childhood, or was that something that you didn't realize until like later on?
It is something that, I mean, I just always stuck with, and I was someone growing up who was involved, and I mean, continue to be, but involved in like the arts in many different forms. Like I loved singing and theater and dance and
like
writing, and
like
I loved expression and all the emotions, all the feelings, and I think art, like sketching and painting and things is, I mean, I still engage in like those other creative hobbies and things here and there, but painting and sketching was something that like I could do anywhere, and it doesn't necessarily take that much, and it can be sort of just for me. You don't have to do it with someone else.
Close
you can just
the book
do it.
And that's
totally. And I think that, I mean, for many different reasons, it's like just the act of like making something by hand and stepping away from a screen for a while has just always been very refreshing.
So did you study art?
Yes. Yeah. So I have my minor in fine art painting from University of Oregon.
Okay. So you're on the West Coast there. Yeah. That's awesome. And then, so
Are you from the Twin Cities then originally?
I'm from South Dakota originally.
Pretty much the Twin Cities.
Yeah, but Midwest for sure. Yeah.
So went to school out in Oregon.
Yep.
And then when you got there, you kind of were like, okay, I'm going to be a professional artist?
No.
What was the plan?
So I went to school for, actually, I did apply into the art school as my major. And then I chickened out. I was like, I kind of was like, wait a minute. No, I'm in college. I need to have a job that is secure and a professional path. Yeah. And so I switched to journalism and political science.
Did that come from somewhere, that thought process?
I think just society and culture in general. And the fact that, there isn't an exact path for artists to do it as a full-time profession. There are ways, but I think that a lot of the narrative that we have culturally is that you can't make money as an artist. And I still have people come up to me all the time and ask me about that.
That's sad.
It is kind of sad.
And kind of offensive a little bit.
Kind of offensive. Kind of. But I did my senior year decide that I was finishing my journalism major, and instead of finishing my political science major, I decided to just spend my senior year basically painting in the art studio. And I was like, I just always thought that in college I would take art classes, I would learn more art history. And so, I'm just going to do it. And so then I did get the minor.
Okay. So you got that. That's awesome. So what'd you do after that?
So after that, I served as a Peace Corps volunteer. So, when I applied, to give a little background on that, I grew up traveling. I love to travel. And, at the University of Oregon, my campus job was leading student, service trips.
Okay.
And so, over spring break and winter break, doing things like disaster relief in New Orleans or,
was that an internship you were doing or just something?
It was kind of my campus job. So we had a service learning program.
Gotcha.
And leadership office at University of Oregon. And so just kind of facilitating. It was so cool. My senior year, I helped lead a group to India to do
cool.
Work on rural development. And honestly, we ended up learning more about just kind of philosophy of service and kind of what does it mean to serve. And
what did you learn?
Sort of that often, this maybe isn't profound exactly, but that a lot of when you are serving, you are serving yourself, and that you are probably gaining more out of the overall
interaction
maybe than the person you're trying to serve. But I think that so for a lot of reasons, after college, I had thought about the Peace Corps for a long time, and I kind of got to that point where I was like, if I don't do it, if I don't apply, then I'll always wonder and I might regret it. So
you did it.
So I did it. Yeah.
That's so smart. So, and how long were you in the Peace Corps for?
27 months is your service.
That's the max.
So, so you do, well, you can extend, but the service contract is 2 to 3 months of training. And then you receive your placement for your 2-year job.
And then they just put you kind of wherever?
And they put you wherever, yeah.
Wow.
Yeah.
So were you doing art through that whole experience as well?
No. So I was actually placed as an English teacher. So in Lesotho, so in sub-Saharan Africa, Lesotho is the little enclave, kind of donut hole in South Africa. So it's a country within a country. So one of the only enclave countries in the world. But it is, it's separated from South Africa in part because it's so mountainous. And so so the entire country is
a mountain.
Very
or a couple mountains.
Right, yeah, exactly. Pretty high elevation.
Is it pretty tight from a square mile area, or is it a pretty big?
Now you're quizzing me.
Sorry, my bad.
I know the entire population is less than 2 million people, and the land mass I want to say is around the size of Rhode Island, or maybe
that's a lot of human beings to be in Rhode Island, though.
Maybe I'm wrong. Maybe don't quote me on that.
All right, we won't quote you.
Don't. Yeah, but and the villages are quite spread out, and so the village I served in was a rural village. I the school was along the river, no running water or electricity. I washed my clothes in the river
For 2 years?
for 2 years. Yeah.
Damn.
Yeah.
Would you recommend it?
I would. Yes. Yeah.
Like instantaneously.
I mean, my service, I mean, definitely shaped me in
That's awesome.
to, I don't know, I think a
I mean,
more
that period
patient,
of time,
understanding
though, like
person.
there's
yeah.
so much like change and
Yeah.
creativity that a young person's going through to like kind of find themselves or
Right.
identify like, okay, what's the rest of the story? Because
Right.
like the first 22, 23 years is kind of
You're right.
like the society has almost like carved that out
Yeah,
for us,
totally.
right? So
Yes.
then now at that point where you've been kicked out of the nest and now you got to figure your shit out.
Right.
There's so many places people can go. So I think a lot of people just get lost. But
Totally.
if you're gonna do that, like go someplace cool and get lost, like
Right, yeah.
because then you can like experience.
Yeah.
So while you're going through that, I know that like teaching art was something that kind of became a thing, right?
Yeah, I mean, interestingly, so I was trained as an English teacher and kind of as a resource teacher. So all of my coworkers were Basutu, and basically I would kind of cycle around the classrooms, mainly 7th grade through 12th grade, 4th grade through 7th grade, and then a little bit of work with the secondary school. But it surprised me that the village and the school and the teachers asked me to do art as often as they did. Because I think that in my mind, I was like, okay, well, they brought me here to learn English to help them prepare for their exams so that they can get good jobs. But I think that my coworkers, so I hadn't worked in an elementary school before. I had taught adult education when I was in college, but I hadn't worked with kids before. And so my co-teachers in Lesotho were like, the best way to get kids to learn is to have them, stimulated and have them have fun. And so what you are, these activities that when I started doing things like drawing or, just things with like movement or song, they were already doing some of that. And I think or games, and they just loved the idea of bringing like more of that into their classrooms.
Alongside English then too?
Yeah,
Because it sounds
totally.
like there was a language barrier there.
Yes. Right? Well, so my coworkers all spoke English, but the village, many of the kids, all the kids at home spoke Sesotho as their language.
That is a difficult job.
Yes.
Man. So was it like hard to like do that? Like, was there any point where you were about to bail? Like, did they even allow that?
You definitely can.
Okay.
You can always leave.
You're not enslaved for 27
No,
months.
you're not. You're not. At any point, you can return to the United States. Yeah, it was hard. But I think that, a lot of times people ask me like, oh, was it like the running water or electricity or things like that like, were hard or that you got tired of? And like that stuff, like, no, not at all. You get used to just living the way everyone else around you lives,
Yeah, it's not like somebody over there has got Wi-Fi.
Exactly, totally. So, that stuff just becomes like, humans are so adaptable. So, you kind of like just learn how you live and then you're like, okay, that's how we do things here. But it was hard being away from like family and friends and yeah, like the language barrier is tricky because, so I could speak, so we had like language training before I arrived or, when I first arrived in the country, and then, I continued to learn as I went. So I'd say I could be conversational with, talking about like things going on at home or school.
Gotcha.
Or I gardened when I was there. So people would ask me about my garden. But at a certain point, like, it is hard, language barriers, just to really be able to express yourself and have people understand you.
But you
It's
had
hard.
like faculty members telling you like, hey, all this other stuff that's not like what teaching English maybe looks
totally.
like that's a good way for them to
Yes.
learn from you.
Totally.
Fascinating.
Yeah. And my coworkers were awesome. I think that's the thing with I lucked out because I had such a welcoming community and such just like really
That's
fun
awesome.
loving, cool, supportive coworkers.
So is that engaging of like a child's mind or that like part of their brain? Is that something that the school systems are using now to try to bring out some of that like learning potential in kids? Because like I know sitting in a classroom for me sucks, but if I
Totally.
can doodle, it's a little bit better.
Yeah. Oh, I think so. I think that, I mean, most teachers realize that, like, whether it's a
Yeah.
child or an adult or anything, that like rote memorization and just sitting in one spot is not the most ideal
it's brutal.
way to learn anything. So
It's brutal.
yeah, totally.
It's not good for art.
No,
So okay, so you're teaching art at that point.
Yep.
27 months come and go, and then what?
So I decided that, Peace Corps had always been kind of a bucket list item of mine. And as I was wrapping up my service, I still didn't exactly know what I wanted to do professionally, or at least like maybe wouldn't admit what I wanted to do professionally. And so I was like, okay, well, I have this journalism major. What's another thing I've always wanted to try? And I'd always wanted to live in New York City. And so I had like a second cousin whose family lived in the Bronx. And so I reached out to her and sort of asked like, hey, if I like moved to New York City, could I like crash with you guys for a little while I like got on my feet?
Yeah, it's better than washing your clothes in
Yeah,
the room.
totally. Well, and I was kind of like, I'll just do it. And so I started interviewing for jobs, actually while I was still in Lesotho, and then had some interviews lined up, and then ended up getting a job with a public relations firm in New York City. So
you're doing PR.
Then I did PR
Really?
in New York. Yes, yeah.
In New York too.
Yeah.
Okay. So
Yeah.
obviously that one didn't stick. You decided to
It
turn
didn't.
the page at some point.
And there was a couple things with that. I mean, so I love New York City, and I think that like the art and culture there is part of what I've always loved about New York, and kind of part of like the grandeur of living there and everything. And yeah, I mean, it was interesting. I'm glad like I had that experience, but yeah, there was some like kind of family health stuff that happened, and just kind of some like reevaluation of like my priorities, and like whether I really wanted to like build a life in a place that was so far away from most of my family, which was in the Midwest. And by that time, my twin sister had moved to Minneapolis, and so kind of I sort of made a pretty difficult decision to move back to the Midwest.
Move from the Big Apple to the mini apple.
Yeah, exactly.
And that's funny. I feel like a lot of people forget that Minneapolis is like the mini New York.
It is, yeah.
So
great arts and culture scene. Yeah.
So is your twin sister, is she artistic as well?
Yes, definitely.
Is this a genetic thing?
I don't know.
Are your parents artistic?
Both my parents are surgeons.
So no, it's not genetic unless it's recessive.
They're creative though, and lovers of the arts for sure.
Well, they have to be. They've got two
totally.
artistic
So
daughters.
they're both more artistic than they sometimes like.
Do you
give themselves
Do you think
credit
like
for.
part of the system almost like breaks people's artistic capabilities by like boxing them in?
Yeah. Oh, totally. I think so. I think that in a strange way, like, I don't know, the way, like, as we get older and things, like, we start, like, the arts become kind of like hyper professionalized in some ways, of being like, you either are going to do this professionally and be really good at it and perfect. And then you're allowed to do it. Or, you know, or you just like get out, you know,
or you're going to be
get out of here. Yeah, exactly. Oh yeah, exactly. And I don't know. Yeah. But I think that some of like the joy of creating art, even if it's just for yourself, and knowing that like being creative helps you in so many other ways, and that like any kind of like creative activity helps to like build that muscle. I think that's something that gets lost.
Well, and we were talking about it before we got going, but like that creative muscle that you just referenced, like that, it very much exists in business.
Absolutely.
Like
business is so creative. The art of like building something and you know, providing a product or a service, just like the nuts and bolts of like operations and everything.
Yeah.
There's so many ways to build and create something.
I feel like
that.
they're very much opposing
I know.
ideas though, although like the activities and by activities, I guess I mean thought processes that have to go into it are so similar.
Totally.
Especially anything that's going to like be built or created, like it starts from zero, and then like over time, however far you're gonna go, like you gotta consistently create and repeat.
Yep. I think that's
So-
such an interesting intersection. Anything that kind of explores like that art.
I don't
and
think
business
anyone
kinda,
really talks about it though.
Yeah,
Like, but
yeah.
innovation, like when there's innovation, that's when like massive
Right.
capital comes behind it. When
Absolutely.
it's like a novel concept. Like look
Sure.
at like the smartphone. Like as soon as
Yeah,
that happened,
totally.
now like all of a sudden that's all that happens. But somebody had to come up with that crazy ass idea.
Totally.
So for your like business now, like tell me a little bit about like the trajectory you took to go from moving to Minneapolis and now you're painting murals and doing Prince murals and all this different stuff.
Totally.
So
Yeah. I mean, I continued kind of working professionally in marketing and communications, PR, and sort of that world for quite a few years. And I mean, what continued to draw me to that work was that, I mean, it is a creative part of business. I mean, so much of marketing and kind of like storytelling and all of those pieces, I mean, continue to serve me really well. And I, have great people and kind of fun projects and things like that. But yeah, I had done some murals while I was in the Peace Corps for schools. And I mean, just really was struck by sort of like the impact they make in a space, the way that you can sort of engage with like community, the way that like kids respond to like once a space is transformed. I mean, I kind of like fell in love with that. And then funny enough, actually, after the Peace Corps, the next mural I did was I had started the MBA program at University of Minnesota, Carlson School of Management, and I did a mural for them.
Oh, really?
So yeah,
That's a good start.
exactly, totally. So yeah, they were. I had done kind of a smaller mural for a conference, and then they had been thinking about commissioning a piece of art. And it was funny. Their head of PR for the school, like found out I had done this other little mural for this conference. And then he was like, oh my gosh, like we were thinking about commissioning something from the art school, but if one of our MBA students can paint a
That'd be even
mural,
better.
that's
this is a home
that's
run.
great. Yeah, exactly. And that project, I mean, remains still like such a special project to me because they wanted to illustrate what business as a force for good looks like. And so for that project, I interviewed students, faculty, other kind of business owners around the Twin Cities and kind of just looked for things that kept coming up. And then the mural that I designed and went through multiple kind of iterations of feedback from faculty and leadership. Then like that design was just something that like the school could really stand behind of being like, yeah, like we believe that business is a foundation for the arts and agriculture.
So you
and
went
medicine.
out and you were recruiting these ideas or like
inviting input. Yeah.
Well, so you said like you were looking for things that kind of came up. Like what were those things that you kind of noticed as you talked to all these individuals in that like research part of the process?
I mean, I think innovation is something that comes up a lot, that, I mean, like what good business does is solves real needs for real people, and so it's like addressing pain points. And then I think just creating, like in a community like the Twin Cities, having a thriving business community where you have great talent drawn here. I mean, that creates a foundation for, a wonderful like arts community. I mean, I think the fact that always gets thrown out is that we have as like the more theater seats per capita than like almost any other city besides New York. I mean, we have so many, just wonderful museums.
What is it about Minnesota?
I mean, I think that there's more funding for the arts here. But also, I mean, when you have people when you're trying to attract talent to a place, I mean, you want to have theaters and music and dance and all these things that people can enjoy. And I think that that's why the business community in the Twin Cities really puts, I mean, they put support behind that. You know, there's a lot of sponsorship for theaters and galleries and things that come from corporate, you know, and small business, you know,
business,
I mean, from business entrepreneurs. I think that they realize that those things aren't exclusive. Like if you want a thriving community, that means like business and creatives and I mean, many different people working together. Yeah, totally.
That's amazing. So like we have a building over in Northeast that we've been talking about that the mural process that we're going through, right? And so when we got that location over there, I started looking around at like just generally other murals in North Minneapolis, just around Minneapolis in general. They're freaking everywhere, actually. That like there's a lot of them, and it's almost like they pop up sometimes, like. Unless it's like an area you drive by every day and you see the work happening, like it's all of a sudden just there and you're like, what the heck? So with that like community, there's obviously other people that do mural work.
Yes.
But it sounds like with the collaboration, everything that you do, that it's like together, like everyone kind of sort of knows each other for the most part, and there's like overlap almost, or not quite.
Well, I think that there are, I mean, you're right. There are like so many talented artists and mural painters and things in the Twin Cities, and there's definitely some overlap, but I mean, there's so many people. I mean, there's definitely people I don't know, you know, who do this kind of work.
So those murals, like when you think about a mural or a piece of art that you see that you didn't do, like, what do you, like, how do you think about it? Do you like think about like what the artist was trying to put together, or who asked them to do this, or like what are the wheels turning on?
Well, so probably since I started doing more regularly, and once I started doing this full time, I think probably the first thing that usually I think about now when I see a mural is like, how did they do it? Because that can be kind of the technical aspect of access. If it's like a very big mural,
like ladder work and all that stuff.
Ladders, lifts, how did they transfer their design? You know, what kind of paint did they use? Like, I don't know,
like
all these things.
Different things.
Yeah, totally. I mean, that it's kind of fun to sort of try to like reverse engineer, like how did they make that happen? But then, I mean, to your point, I think just like for the subject matter and things like, I definitely like notice whether kind of the intent is it to sort of to like shock or is it like to beautify? Is it to sort of express something that's important to the community where this is created? You know, what is it representing about a business? If it's from a business standpoint, I mean, people paint their garage doors sometimes as piece of self-expression. And
I'm trying to think like people that get murals, like, is there like a person is the personality that purchases a mural or is thinking about that?
Totally.
Are they more of like that creative kind of artistic thinker anyway?
Yes, I think definitely like many of my clients are very creative folks who just like, you know, maybe also do art and just like really value that. But I'd say other times it's people who just really want something unique, you know, one of a kind, because instead, you know, especially if instead of a banner or something they bought, you know, at a big box store or, you know, something, I mean, even things that are like vinyl and stuff. I mean, I think that when you're asking something to be painted, you know, to be designed and painted for you, there's something that's just very, or for the community, that there's something just like very special about that. Yeah. And so I think it's people that recognize that. You're sharing
like
it.
You're the one paying for it, getting it done.
Totally.
But it's not really even for you.
Right.
Like it is a little bit, but the greater percentage of the pie is like all the other people that that it's for.
Right.
That's it. That's interesting because, I mean, I'm thinking like murals, like all the old ones in like churches and stuff like that.
Right.
Same concept at that point, but that's a lot more like that documenting, storytelling.
Sure.
That like photographs do now.
Totally.
So fascinating.
And I guess, but I'd say also, I mean, a much larger percentage of my clients than I would have originally expected are residential. I mean, people who decide they want something that is just for them, you know, in their home.
How big of murals are we talking here? Like
I mean,
in people's houses?
100, 200 square feet,
Oh
I mean,
how much
big.
paint is that? That's a lot of paint. I feel
a
like.
gallon of paint covers like 400 square feet.
Okay.
So, I mean, if you're going to
did
paint
not
a
know
whole,
that. That's
but
good.
obviously usually I'm using more than one color but it's like smaller stuff. So yeah.
That's okay. So as you were talking a little while ago, I was thinking about like you kind of had that path into marketing PR. Is like that's almost the path that's kind of laid out for
Yeah.
art, right? Kind of like I don't know where else you end up other than like broke artists. This is like society, obviously, that doesn't make money. Marketing, PR, journalism, or like one of the 5 famous artists that I can think of. But there's obviously more to it than that, right?
Yeah. I mean, I would say that I think because making a living as an artist, because there isn't really like a clear path forward, it's hard to say that like one way leads you more likely to becoming, an artist. I think that there are ways. I mean, I'd say that as far as in looking back on my path, I guess, the fact that I ultimately kind of, chose something that was a creative field.
Is that just so you didn't hate going to work?
I think so. And actually, so there's a wonderful book that I really love that's called The Artist's Way. It's by Julia Cameron.
Okay.
And she talks about how many people become shadow artists. So basically they like want to be an artist or they want to be a creative, but they are like kind of scared. And so they do this other thing that's like maybe on a periphery, or they might marry an artist.
Okay.
Or
so
they can be close to it.
Like
Right.
they're close to the creative.
Totally.
So is society like puts this like, we're going to teach you this for all of the years of school that you have, but then we're also going to teach you that you can't have success. Like,
totally.
What the hell is that?
I don't really know. That's still something that I'm trying to unpack, I think, because then I think when so I feel like, so choosing a creative field, then it was like when I decided to go get my MBA and go into business school, it was like when I discovered entrepreneurship, because I didn't really know many people who had ever started their own businesses or anything like that. Like when I started being surrounded by an entrepreneurial community, I was like just so inspired, because here are people with, dreams and ideas and like kind of a thirst for innovation and things like that, which is artistry.
Yeah.
And they are not accepting, that like, oh, but you'll never make money. They're like, no, I will follow my path and my vision, and I will figure out a way to support myself, and grow this thing. And so I think that I think that was like a really healthy community for me to be a part of as someone who I think had kind of always wanted to make art and was sort of like, but I don't know, I can't, there's no way. And then I was like, oh.
So the MBA thing was that, were you just why did you go to business school?
I think I had so many creative interests and things I wanted to pursue and that I was interested in. I do think that I hoped that going to business school would teach me how to support myself doing something that I love doing. Yeah.
Okay.
But I didn't know
so you're trying
exactly,
to find a way out almost.
Kind of.
A way out of the matrix.
Just finding something that felt, I don't know, more self-guided maybe.
Like it was your idea.
Yeah. Right.
And now here we are.
Yeah, exactly.
Now you're okay. So tell us a little bit about I don't know, what's the last piece of art that you put together?
The last piece of art that I put together, what was the last piece of art that I put together? I was working with one of our BNI chapter peers, Hatal, for her new dental studio.
Okay.
Yeah. So doing a mural for her that's culturally significant, that just kind of adds some color and personality into her new space.
That's awesome.
And yeah.
So she brought you in, and she has this awesome new facility out in Medina, right? So she brings you in and she says, she gives you the exact picture she wants you to paint, and you just go and paint it, right? Just kidding. No.
She showed me several different examples of images that she liked, and they're all inspired from the part of India where where her family's from.
Yep.
And so I did stay pretty close to kind of the style where that she had given me, because I wanted to, respect that style.
But that's kind of like unique about you, right? Because a lot of other people don't like have that fluidity of the style or type of art that they do. It's like, this is kind of, this is what I do.
Yeah.
You like this one? Otherwise you can go down the road.
Totally. I think that is something that like I don't, or something that I'm finding is an asset, even though early on I'd been kind of like very hung up on the whole thing of like, but I don't know my style. I don't know like I don't know what my voice is as an artist, and you get kind of all boxed in and crazy about that. But the thing is like, I love to paint. I'm good at reproducing different styles and working across different styles. I love the challenge of trying something new that I haven't done before. And so I find that in kind of doing collaborative work with my clients, that the fact that like I can sort of cross a much larger range of like provided skills and styles and things like serves me well for this.
I mean, I think like to the consumer, like they don't freaking know.
Right. Exactly.
They don't even know about any of that. Like the artist knows. And I think that's a lot of industries really, not just like art, but like pest control, for example. Like I could tell you about all the specific types of ways we can kill the pests and how much better we are than all the other pest control companies. But at the end of the day, like a lot of people don't freaking care.
Right.
Like they don't. They're like, I got bugs, or I got this, I got a raccoon, like, and they just go to the source and the expectation is for it to be solved. So sometimes I think us as business owners, we like, before we even start anything, we like start putting these walls in the way.
Right.
Because of shit, we know that the people that are going to pay us have no clue. They have no idea. Yeah. So the first, what was the first piece of art you got paid for? Was it the Carlson School of Business? Was that the first one?
Well, I mean, way back, I had like a friend buy a canvas for me once in high school, and I was like, oh my gosh, someone wants to buy this thing I made. Wow. But yeah, the first large commission I got, that sort of made me kind of like sit up and be like, whoa, gosh, like this is real money. This is like, this is, there's a need for this. And like, it takes a lot of work to create this. And
I think that's what people forget is like the time that goes into it, time and materials that exists in every business, right?
Exactly.
So if just my understanding of how long that takes, like it's wrong. Right, like for me to watch
for anyone in a different industry, it's hard to gauge like what goes. But
then,
into
where does this dollar amount in our mind come from? Where we have like that costs too much, or it's like where did?
Well, and art is like the worst about that too, because it's like you can have a painting sell for, the like million, 200 million. I think like the Mona Lisa was like recently valued at like, I forget exactly, like $800 million or something like that. Exactly,
from,
right?
Like how, like who's in charge of that?
Right.
First of all, obviously they're doing it for insurance or whatever, right?
Sure.
But like if there's a algorithm or some type of math problem that we can go out and say, okay, everyone, this is how we judge art and how much value it has. I feel like it would clear things up for a lot of people, but. There's like certain pieces I've seen where it looks like some dude like took a pencil, went like that, and now it's on the wall in a museum. And so the business of art for me is so all over the place. It seems like some type of psychedelic has been consumed just when they were putting together like the model.
Right.
So in museums, like how do people make money within like that that whole construct that's like, okay, we've got all this fancy stuff in here, come like take a look at it.
Sure. I mean, so I'm speaking a little out of my depth in some way. I mean, like I have some
feels like it's all like in the same shape.
I know, totally. Because I would say that the museum industry and even like the world of gallery sales and things, is kind of its own industry. It's sort of its own beast, and like that world has come under criticism. In some ways, it's been for a long time. It was sort of like a path to success, and there's a lot of more institutional gatekeepers like in that world. I'd say the some of the critique is as far as like where money is exchanged is that like a painting can continue, or a piece of art can continue to accrue value that like, the original artist isn't ever going to see, or like their community. Exactly. But at the same time, I mean, I'd say like art museums nowadays and gallery owners nowadays, I mean, really try to be advocates for representing like underheard voices, or maybe providing like a showcase space to like talk about like what like certain pieces of art or artists sort of like reveal about culture as a whole, or things like that. And so it's, in some ways I'd say that like that world is kind of its own thing, but it's a lot more about starting conversation. And, you know, I talk to a lot of people, and even sometimes I feel like a little daunted about walking into an art museum, or like something where you're like, oh, I don't want to feel like confused or like dumb or something, because I don't understand this work, when like the intent is usually to like just start asking questions, start looking at like, well, what do I like, or what don't I like? It should get you to think. It should be almost like a psychological experience, you know, and versus being like, oh, I get it or I don't get it. You know, usually it's like inviting participation.
Okay.
Yeah. That's so maybe a little bit of a tangent.
It's like engaging in thought, really.
Engaging in thought.
Somebody takes these thoughts,
right?
They put it into some type of canvas or a mural,
right?
And like what you're doing with your business is you're like taking fragmented thoughts from people, and like you're taking that and like trying to like formalize it and like then put it together. So that's like another iteration almost of art, in my opinion, because it's not like you just like found a wall and started painting something you're thinking about. Like, exactly. It has parts of you and parts of like what you're thinking about, but a lot of it is coming from this kind of framework that you're given almost.
Right. Yeah. Which like crazy. In some ways, so I one time like was chatting with an architect who like basically described his creative process, like when he's designing a building, as being like, you know, I find out about the community, I find out, you know, about like what this like space needs to serve, and then I create the building that like wants to be made based on the criteria. Like it fits the criteria. You know, my unique spin is going to just come through because it's coming through me. But like, what is the thing that wants to be made? And like, I try to decide what that is, you know? And like, I like that, because for me, it's kind of like, I'm combining different pieces. I'm really trying to like kind of empathize and understand with like what the client wants, and then to create, some options for them to respond to that then of course like can be iterated and adjusted. Then, right? Yeah, totally. But sometimes it's like, you know, just creating the thing that I'm like, okay, well, this fits the, you know, the need, and here's some different ways we could do it. And then, you know, that's like, then that's.
So when you're doing these, are you hoping that it's going to like stick around for like ever? Or is there like a lifetime?
Yeah. So this is, different artists have like very different opinions about this. I feel that murals, I mean, quality wise, they should last like a while, but I mean, it's like, you know, they are, especially if it's an exterior, I mean, it's going to be exposed to elements and things like that. And so eventually, you know, like buildings crumble, you know, things like that, of course. But I think that, yes, like when I create a work, I want it to accomplish what it needs to accomplish, you know, but I am not so like, I'm not an artist, I guess, that feels like this needs to last forever, because, or that my voice or like my image should be the thing that's up there forever, because, you know, communities change, the needs of a space might change. And I think that that's okay for like things to evolve, and for like a new artist's work to maybe be up there, like layers of
I
mean, so I I mean, yeah, anything I create, like quality wise, I want it to last as long as possible for the client.
The wind's not going to blow it out.
No, so I mean, you use really like premium, high quality materials to protect the work and make it last. But yeah, for me, I guess like I don't get as much of an attachment of being like, this must exist forever and for hundreds of years from now, I want this to still be.
That's how I think, I guess. So I think about Minneapolis and all the random murals that are there. Do you have like one that is like your favorite in the Twin Cities?
Oh gosh, that's a hard question.
I know.
Yeah. Oh gosh, I don't know if I have one that's really my favorite. And like I said, a lot of the ones that I've made are inside people's homes or inside like a school, or I don't know, like they're all so different, it's like, and that's sort of another cool part about them is that like I get to know clients pretty well throughout the creation of like their project. And, when I'm then actively painting a project, then I'm like spending a lot of time in there, or outside, kind of like talking to the community, or sometimes I do group murals. And so I'll have like high school students or something who are like helping to paint, and so it's like, I don't know, every one is sort of a snapshot into like a different like sliver of like life and humans and the businesses they're doing, or
that's
like
kind of like
it's cool.
art in general, right? Like it's that idea that somebody put out there, and now its purpose is to like get people to think and have more ideas and questions about that. Like, and, like you said, get that conversation started.
Right.
Which I think is rather profound, actually. Like the more I'm thinking about it, like all these ancient type of things that we see, like somebody was thinking about something when they did it,
right?
And like now we are still talking about it, like within like our framework, but still trying to pinpoint like what that human was thinking when they put it together, and what was going on around it, and what was society like. So like
it's like an I mean, it's like it's a way, like it's like a lens that like you can use to look at the world and sort of question the world and things like, but it's not the only lens, I mean, it's like there's exactly, but it's one way and it's kind of a fun way. Yeah.
I think it's amazing, really. I just don't know if there's like as much art nowadays that's going to be able to stick around as long. Like stuff is more like here and gone in our society now compared to like, I feel like way back when they were like, we're going to make this shit last forever. Like it's never going to die.
And I think there are still, things like that. And there are, I mean, even for murals that have a lot of cultural significance and things. I mean, sometimes they're moving a whole wall into a space where it can be protected, and I think that is something that's kind of cool with like the technology and things that we have nowadays, is that, I mean, I will say that it's like, and I know I like ragged a little bit on like art institutions, but I mean, they really are like caretakers of art and like the protectors of these pieces that like do matter a lot, and I mean, that art is still being made. It's just, I think it's easier to look back on, the fact that like there are those pieces that have already been selected versus like right now we're sort of awash in like, we don't know in like right now exactly which pieces will be the most significant always,
So is it like a person or personality that like somebody builds that now attracts people to their art, or is there like, how do artists become like a professional artist, and like how most people think about it, I guess, where all they do is paint or do sculptures, and now that's their full-time job.
Yeah. I mean, there are a lot of paths, and I do think that art is, and I'm not even, and when I'm been saying like art, it's like I'm talking about painters kind of, because that's sort of my little sliver of the world. But
I feel like art can go
so many different ways. Yeah. But I mean, there's a lot of ways that people make like art and either make money or don't make money through creating
their
art.
Why do people like Picasso or like Salvador Dali?
Yeah.
Like why? like why? Like, is it because there's so many things that are out there?
Well, I think that, so a lot of times when you're looking back in like art history, there are specific like artistic movements that started to like grow. And a lot of times it's like art, you know, like it's like a community of artists that started to explore this idea, you know, of like, you know, like we were kind of chatting about earlier. So, I mean, like art and painting and things like changed a lot after the dawn of photography because, I mean, now portraits, you know, didn't necessarily need to be the way that you'd have a reference or a memory of like a loved one or something for posterity and or a landscape that you really loved. I mean, you could get a photograph. And so I think the painters kind of were like, well, gosh, like, well, what are we doing then? And I mean, and a lot of like the artistic community and kind of like schools of painting and things changed a lot after like the World Wars. Because I mean, I think the world was just sort of like
turmoil
in turmoil. Yeah. Horrified by these like atrocities that humans had done to each other and that like found some solace in sort of like representing feelings more than like representation. And so I think that's where like painting and the role of art in general sort of started to change, is that like a lot of artists will create something that, you know, it's supposed to make you feel something. And I had an art teacher in college once say that like painting is trying to do what like instrumental music has always been able to do. Like, you know, you don't need words to feel something when you listen to a song, you know. It's just like in like abstract painting and even now with different forms of representational painting, like you don't need to be told like exactly what this is to be able to feel something in response to it. So, but the value, but I don't know exactly like, why, you know,
I feel like there's
why Picasso or why Salvador Dali.
Well,
I mean, there are reasons, but they probably knew the right people. Yeah. They had the right community. They were doing something novel. You know, they pushed the boundaries of art, like what had been accepted as art.
Something different to make it like worth a conversation, even if it's like this guy over here sucks.
Right.
See this new stuff he's doing.
And like, you know, we were saying too, it's like many of those artists, like where their work is, you know, incredibly valuable nowadays. Like sometimes people at the time were completely berated by critics and things who were like, this is terrible. This isn't art. This is ugly. This is like, we're not going to display this in galleries. We're not going to, you know, it's kind of it's sort of mind-boggling.
Starting to come together for me, but now I'm just lost again.
Sorry. I know.
But it's not your fault. I think it was
just,
like
it's a
this
difficult, no, totally. It's a challenging industry kind of. Yeah.
Do you have a favorite artist?
Oh,
like somebody that like inspires you or something like that?
I mean, I love the work of Gerhard Richter. He's a German painter. And I think that when I was in college and was introduced to his work, he's another painter where he can do beautiful, you know, photorealistic paintings. But the work he's most famous for, he uses a squeegee and kind of creates these abstract works that are just gorgeous, you know. And he achieved great commercial success while alive. I think he's still alive. But his paintings are extremely valuable, and I think that the fact that he had like a wide range of skills and he just does these really cool things with color and I don't know, he really challenged like my notion of what it means to be like a successful artist and like to put work forward and into the world. And
that's awesome.
Yeah. So
what do you think about Banksy? That's my favorite artist because he like breaks the rules.
Oh my gosh, of course. No, I love it. I think Banksy is brilliant because he surprises people. I think that, and he's not so serious about his work. You know, I think that like one of the things that I think is the worst in the world of art is like when it's like, this yawn, you know, because art should be playful and provocative and pushing, you know, boundaries. And it's like, and something that like people can respond to and engage with, you know, that it's like the fact that he kind of will just like show up somewhere and make something and like, and that it's, this amazing work, and that it's often very poignant and, and, you know, very much,
you ever thought of doing something like that?
No,
Are
not
you
really.
Banksy? You wouldn't tell me even if you were.
No, not really. Okay. I usually ask permission before.
I feel like you seem like a rule follower.
I'm sort of a rule follower. Yeah.
Okay. So to that, like graffiti is not the same as murals, but it's on a wall.
Right.
Sometimes.
Yeah.
So there's like, they're different. And
totally.
You were talking earlier about how one is like this, like, it's like done for good versus evil almost, right? I mean, it's not really what you said, but.
Well, I think that, so graffiti and murals and street art are all part of the same conversation. I think it's like one of those things where it's like a rectangle is a square, but a square isn't a rectangle. You know, it's like one of those things where you're like, okay, But I think that, there's some beautiful graffiti artists who are creating murals, you know, using spray paint and, you know, are creating amazing work. And I think that is like definitely art. I guess like I feel like, people who are just like kind of tagging something just to have their name out there, or you know, there's like the affiliation of graffiti with like gangs and things like that. Like, I wouldn't necessarily consider that to be something that's art, because it's like kind of intentionally being destructive.
This is not my wall, but I'm gonna paint stuff on it.
Exactly. Just to be kind of a jerk, you know, or to be kind of, I don't know. So I think like, what we were talking about earlier of just like, I think that work that is made to be creative, you know, to versus something that's destructive. Like, I don't know, maybe that's where I would draw the line, but I think it's a hard, like that's a hard line to draw.
Well, to draw.
No pun intended. Yes.
That's funny. All right. So we've kind of hit the end here. I've hammered you with questions today, but I got one more for you.
Okay.
So if you had to define hustle, like in terms of business, how do you define that?
For me, I think it means taking small steps and just continuing on forward. Like, I think that, breaking, because I think for me, like I kind of got in my own head about like, can I make money as an artist? Can I do all these things? It makes like the task, it's easy to make tasks and like dreams and things like for a business or for anything, you know, very like kind of seem insurmountable. Yeah. But like if you can break things into small little steps and just start moving through them, like slowly, like focus on like what you can do, what's in your control, like every day, like move forward. Like for me, I think that's when like hustle, like that's where I start to feel the hustle. It's just like, because then you start getting this energy, it sort of starts moving in itself. Yeah, exactly. You have momentum that kind of moves you
like
through
those
that.
Little wins.
Yes.
Do you ever have like that insurmountable feeling prior to starting like a piece of art or a mural?
Sometimes. Yeah, totally. Especially if it's something I haven't really done before. And if someone approaches me asking if I can do it, you know, my impulse is always to be like, there's got to be a way to do it, you know? And so it's like, I can figure it out, I think, you know? I'm going to do my best.
Hell yeah. I love that. So if anybody wants to get in contact with you, business owner, homeowner, they want a unique piece of art or mural in their home or business, what's the best way for them to reach out to you?
Yeah. So my website is lauramargo.com, and otherwise shooting me an email or...
are you on social media too?
And I'm on social media as well. So you can find me at Instagram at lauramargo.arts. That's my handle on TikTok. But yeah, otherwise on Facebook.
Are you just kind of working here? Or do you travel also?
I do some traveling, but primarily around the Twin Cities. But yeah, I mean, I'd love to do more travel projects. So
you said you love that.
Of course.
So, well, Laura, thank you so much for coming on. I wish I was this excited about art back in school. But thanks for joining us on the Homegrown Hustle podcast. Another great episode as always. Feel free to check us out on Facebook, Instagram, all the social medias, and we'll be tagging Laura and all that as well, so you can get in contact with her and see some of the awesome artwork she's done. Thanks again, Laura. Have a great rest of your day.
Well, thanks so much, Matt.
Thanks again for joining us on Homegrown Hustle. Our local business community thrives because of the brilliant leaders right here in our backyard. And it's been an absolute privilege to provide them with a platform to share their invaluable expertise. Stay tuned for more insight, wisdom, and inspiration from our local business champions. Don't forget to subscribe, rate, and review us on your favorite podcast platform. Together, we'll continue to nurture and expand our homegrown success stories. Matt Eichmann signing off until our next insightful episode.